This is going to be more of an open mic so that everybody has a chance to say whatever they want to say and ask whatever questions that they want. And so the topic will kind of meander around. But Drevu gave us a kind of a thread by talking about traveling and the fact that he is traveling light, or at least he traveled light to get to New Zealand. And when he's traveling back to UK, he's going to be carrying more baggage.
A little bit more. Not
A
too
little
much
bit.
more.
Not too much. All right, that's good. Uh, what we do as children is we begin to pick up things just because we're learning. We absorb material, and so we just kind of pick up things. What happens is that with memory, that we begin to collect that as baggage. And one of the things that we, by instinct, naturally do is that we are more likely to pick up negative baggage than we are to pick up positive baggage. In other words, out traveling, we tend to take the work with us rather than taking pleasure with us. And here's how that happened. If the little child is drawing and having a whole lot of fun drawing, and mom says that that's nice drawing, then it goes nowhere and it may not register very much. But if he is actually drawing on the wall, and mom comes in and sees him drawing on the wall, she may, in fact, out of the socializations that she already has, become upset because now she's thinking about landlords and paint jobs and property destruction and all of that kind of stuff, where the child was just enjoying his art.
Yeah.
So now mom's going to fuss at him for drawing on the wall, and that's going to then be the memory that he has. He may not remember anything else that happened that whole day, but he will remember that time when his mom fussed at him about drawing on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how that is picked up, and it's picked up instinctually, and it's picked up instinctually in the sense of preservation.
Yeah.
That every young child knows, every one of us knows that some things we do is dangerous, and if we continue to do that, we continue to create dangers. Therefore, in order to remain safe,
Mm-hmm.
we remember those dangers.
Right.
Except that the likelihood of you being an adult writing on the wall is very, very low now, but you still remember that time when you were writing on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And you do so, and when you have that memory, it gives a little bit of pain. That in fact, just the flash of nothing but just a tenth of a second of just one image flashing in the mind of that line of that art on the wall is enough to cause one to feel bad, when in fact there was no real reason to feel bad. It was mom's behavior that made him feel bad, not the drawing, but they were associated.
And would you say that evolutionarily, as a species, we have learned to prioritize self-preservation more than anything? But
Absolutely.
our social structure has changed so much that those threats are not anymore, life-threatening. Most of the threats that we now encounter are symbolic, right? Maybe a
Exactly.
loss of job. But yeah, and we have probably gone too far into protecting ourselves, but we don't realize that it's time that we take opportunity of the protection that we have. Like, we don't need to be scared when we go out on the road, for most of us, I would say.
You just made an extremely important point, and that is that the our self-preservation mechanism that
Mm-hmm.
actually has a whole lot to do with a very localized area of the brain that's called the amygdala. You probably
Mm-hmm.
already know about this, okay? And this propensity of self-preservation to try to to save or protect is actually the guys who labeled it in the first place mislabeled it. It's not a self-protection organism or mechanism. It's an organism protection mechanism.
Yeah.
to instinctually protect the organism. But he
Mm-hmm.
had already made the mistake and called it the self-preservation instinct, and so naturally every one of us falls right into that trap because, in fact, that's what's happening. Is originally it was a organism protection mechanism, but because it's gotten symbolic in
Yes.
reality, it's
Yeah.
also gotten symbolic that it's not the organism we're trying to protect anymore, it's the self.
Yeah. The identity most,
It's the
more
identification of who
accurately.
I
Yeah.
am that we're trying to protect. It's our
Yeah.
identity that we're trying to protect, not
Mm-hmm.
the actual organism. But we start with that because the little child is actually operating correctly with his instincts because he actually is in danger of his mommy giving him a spanking. Okay.
Yeah.
But symbolically, when he grows up and thinks about that wall drawing, it's no longer it's a organism protection mechanism. It becomes a self protection mechanism because we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to protect something symbolic. That's why it becomes symbolic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the amazing part because the symbols come and go,
Mm-hmm.
but the organism remains. Over time, it makes a whole lot of changes so that it's not the same organism. That in fact, you've heard things like this. This is something that all little Buddhist boys and girls should hear, and that is that every cell of your body that you had 7 years ago is no
Mm-hmm.
longer there. Not one cell. Every one of them, the neurons, the uh, um, the stem cells, the stomach cells, everything changes. But more than that is that every water molecule that is in
Mm-hmm.
your body 7 years ago is gone. There's
Does it
Right.
nothing
does it
physical about us that was there 7 years ago.
so why 7 years? What is this
Well, that's just kind of an average. That in fact, there's a lot of things. One of the things that you can say is that on an in breath, you have quite a lot of in your physical environment of who you are is just air. And then when
Mm-hmm.
you breathe out, that air is gone. And it's not you, never was you. But it is so intricately a part of you that without that air, you would die.
Yeah.
That we don't realize how intricately connected deeply at a physical level that we are. And because of that deep physical level, the boundaries get loose. And because the boundaries get loose, things keep moving back and forth. And the boundary is actually kind of artificial.
Yeah.
Where
this
that
is like
boundary is, where does your skin end and where the air begins, you think you know that. But if you start looking at it closely, you can recognize wait a minute, there's kind of, um, how to say it, a, an intermediate zone, a
Mm-hmm.
gray area, like when two countries separate, like North and South Korea, they put in a no man's land. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a kind of surface area on your skin that at one level is absolutely you. At another level, it's absolutely not you. It's absolutely air. But where is the boundary? And is that a hard boundary or is it a very soft boundary?
Mm-hmm.
The
And
answer
this
is it
is
depends upon the
accurately
power of your
represent.
microscope.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. And you can see the same thing happening in the brain as well. So uh, the 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 previous idea was like a particular organ was responsible for an emotion or a particular cognitive function. It's now becoming more clear that those structural boundaries are very flexible. So
Mhm.
it's more about tiny units within a so-called structure that performs distinct function from others. So the boundaries kind of dissolve, right? In that sense, we can argue that how a particular unit fires and connects with other parts, it's really a whole different neuron in every moment. So yeah, definitely.
Precisely. And they connect it to at a level that they call synapses.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that a nerve
Yeah.
can have ganglia that go to a number of synapses.
Mm-hmm.
we kind of think that a nerve is like it has one end at one end and the other at the other end, and it just communicates from this end and then communicates at that end, and that's all there is to it. Many
Yeah.
of the nerves will have more than 50 connections.
Mm-hmm.
What
And
does that
those
mean? That
depend
means
on,
it comes in here and it may go off into all kinds of different
yeah,
directions.
yeah.
This is why the number of connections in the human brain, the number of synapses, is greater than the number of stars in the universe.
Yes.
That's amazing, but it happens if you understand factorials in
Mm-hmm.
mathematics. You can see where that number gets so large is because
Yeah.
every neuron is multiply connected.
Right. And we
And
can hack those neuronal firings because it operates on a basis of repetition. So the behaviors that are repeated, those connections in our brain get strengthened, right? So if we the whole idea of diverting our mind into positive direction, cultivating deliberation, all of those, if we with repetition we can sustain those firings, and then it becomes our default, right? So there's
exactly
where,
so. That's beautiful way of saying it. That in fact, this is
right?
why we call it in going from neuroscience that we're talking about now back into Dhamma practice.
Yeah.
That's why we want to do it over and over and over again, is because that gets that repetition begins to build up.
Mm-hmm.
And if we stop doing something that we used to do, it rots away. I've
Yeah.
got many, many evidences of that, and one of them is that one of my students just sent us a very technical piece. It's called Claire de Lune by Debussy, and that I didn't answer back to him, but I remember when I was in high school, I learned to play that piece. I
I
can
see.
sing right along with it now, but put me in front of a keyboard and say play Claire, can't do it. That neuron is gone.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the beauty of, having a skill development approach. So I've often seen people perceive different qualities like, say, resilience or
Mhm.
compassion as something we have. And I think that's kind of limiting, because then we are again operating on either or, right? So we either have that quality or we don't. But if we approach it as a skill, then we can utilize repetition and learn to have those skills. And that is
Exactly.
very synonymous to freedom, right? You have the freedom to choose who you want to be.
Every moment. And if we
Yeah.
keep choosing freedom, or if we keep choosing the wholesome over and over and over again, it
Hmm.
soon, over a period of time, becomes the default
Yeah. Right.
rather than the
Absolutely.
default, which is the default that we build up as a child, which
Yeah.
is basically based in the self-preservation. What we
Hmm.
learned was how to survive.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Survival is no longer the issue. In fact, it may never have been the issue. But
Yeah.
little children, we make that mistake. We think that everything is a survival issue. In
Yeah.
that regard, what we're talking about is the quality of importance.
Hmm.
When we think something is important, then it's much more likely to cause bad feelings for whatever situation that it's in. But when
Yeah.
things become kind of ordinary, then whatever state that ordinary thing is in, we tend not to feel so bad. Because you see, if it's important, the more important it is, the closer to me it is, because when it's important to me.
Yeah.
It's important to the identification of who I am. In fact, the organism may be fine without whatever we thought was important.
Hmm. I think we can make a further distinction between importance and attachment, because if
Mhm.
we take any rational decision, we can ask the question that what is important to me right now. But it can be a very task-based approach, right? But attachment is when we have those automatic feelings and all of those attentional biases, and we kind of get swayed by those feelings, and our decisions get colored. So yeah, I would say that is more of attachment, but importance, I think we can use in a more productive way. What do you think?
Well, the likelihood of us becoming attached to something is because we see its importance.
Yes.
And that you're also mentioning the distinction between what is actually important and what is perceived to be important. And what is perceived to be important is based upon old dangers and whatnot, to
Yeah.
where actual importance is based upon wisdom. In other words, this is basically what we're talking about. The whole process here is to come out of our instinctual living, which sees things important in an instinctual way, and detach ourselves from that, so that now we can really take a look and develop the skill of wisdom. The skill of wisdom will then point out that because of this, that, and the other thing, this becomes important. I'll give you an example of that, because there's very few things in my life that are important. Very few things, but there are a few things that are important. Here's one of them, and that is Thai immigration and getting my visas.
Yeah.
and getting the 90-day check-in and the address thing done. So we actually have to go 5 times a year. One's the really, really big one, which is to get the visa renewed. And there's a whole lot of paperwork that needs to be done with that, including they want a copy of every page of your passport. They want a copy of every page of your passbook. They want a letter from the bank with all the stamps and signatures saying that this money's been in this account for so long, and we guarantee that. Okay, so
Oh, wow.
bank
feel you,
statements, letters from all over the place. Now, here's the point. I can either do all of that work for the visa and hate it, or I could do it as a toy and adventure. And in fact, the way that I approach it is, can I do the visa yet once again without ever going to bad feelings at any particular point in time? That's kind of like the game I play or the toy that I have. I've turned immigration into a toy to play with rather than something that's important.
Yeah.
But I play with the toy because it's important to play with the toy, but that's the only point now. That's why it's important, is because it's a new toy to play with, and I have to play with it on a regular basis. But normally people do have, in fact, the visa and the immigration system is very, very much like the traveling that we had, that people carry a lot of baggage, mental baggage, into the immigration office. People don't like to stand in line for long periods of time, and they don't like to put out so much of their personal information and all of this kind of stuff. But the biggest one is the fear of rejection.
Yeah.
The fear of rejection. The last time that 3 months ago, not this most recent time, but because of COVID, the Thai immigration police have opened a new immigration office here on this island.
Oh, okay.
And they were reluctant to do that for many, many years, which means that all of the people, and quite a number of them, because there's about 4,000 people, residents, 4,000 resident foreigners living on this island, and everyone goes to Koh Samui to do the immigration. Well, now because of COVID and many other things, they've opened an immigration office here on the island. However, there were none of the experienced immigration staff that came from Koh Samui to Koh Phangan. Didn't happen. That's not the Thai way. You cannot take people out of their home and tell them to go over there. That at best they did a bit of training, but basically the Thai police, who became immigration police on the island, had to start raw. They didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
So here I show up, and they say, well, you got to do this, that, and the other thing. Normally, going to Koh Phangan to do the 90-day check-in takes about 30 minutes.
Okay.
3 months ago, it took me 4 different visits to their office. Exactly, 4 different
Wow.
visits, and the last one we stayed and stayed. It took hours, but finally they gave the visa.
Right. So they're
That
struggling. Yeah.
was a lot of hours of play for you.
Well, yes, except Grumpy came home.
Yeah, that's beautiful that you said, you shared that, because when we practice, we think that we cannot be angry or we cannot have these human emotions. But I think that's just unrealistic, because you never can kill your nervous system or the hormones. You can only see that as a state, like a consequence of whatever is happening. And you don't put in another layer of expectation and have
Mhm.
whole new different anxiety and depression about.
Exactly. So
So
Grumpy did come home, and I made a grumpy comment going out the door. And Tam was there, because without her I wouldn't have been able to do it at all. But she was
so
there, and she heard that grumpy comment, and she
so I
says, "You
just
can't talk to the police like that."
I think I just
and
got another insight around this topic of it's okay to be grumpy too.
Yeah,
yeah,
it absolutely is.
yeah. So my grumpy was the statement that I made is that we've been going to Koh Samui, and this takes just 10 or 20 minutes, and here it's taken me 4 visits.
Mm-hmm.
And that grumpy cop came back with me and says, "You can't go to Koh Samui. You got to do it here." And that's the way, because that's the way that the paperwork is done. Once you go into an office, the only way that you can get an immigration office changed is by changing locations. When I go back to Udon Thani, then I'll register in Udon Thani.
Oh,
But
so you have to do everything from scratch, do you? Like, oh,
yeah, but what's not from scratch
yay.
is the fact that I've been living in Thailand all of these years, and the only things that I've had to learn is when immigration itself changes. Well, guess what? They just make a big change. They open an office and staff it with people that didn't have a clue about what they were doing. But
Yay.
fast forward to this visit, the same people, but this time it was absolutely beautiful. I was oh, yes, sir. Thank you. Good to see you, sir. And he checks the documents and then all of that. And it basically took about 10 minutes.
Amazing.
It
So
took 10 minutes this time, because they knew what they were doing, and I knew what they were doing, and it just tip, and it was finished.
so it just
But
took
I
a
could have been grumpy this time, because I remember being grumpy last time. And I
Mhm.
could have walked in there grumpy this time, knowing that it's going to be really bad news like it was last time. No, it was different this time.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the way that we look at it. So now we can see that immigration itself is not important. It's only important to the individual or the ID or the person when they've
Yeah.
got bad feelings mixed in it. When there's no bad feelings, it's just a toy to play with, some things to do. We'll get this done. Everything's going to be all right.
Mhm.
And so this is the kind of attitude that we begin to take with even things that we think are important.
Yeah.
And right now, I don't have anything else important in my life other than immigration, and I've turned that into a toy. I really don't have anything important to do. Certainly,
Yeah.
Dhammarato.
politics. What do you say?
Yeah, I was just going to ask for some help.
Okay.
Because I think I mentioned last time that I'm a little bit bummed about leaving New Zealand and going back to the UK because I have a really good life here. And how can I turn that into a toy? Like, can you?
Have you
Like,
been to the UK
yeah, I used
before?
to live there.
Yes, okay. So
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of the things that will be possible for you is to start paying close attention to the things that have changed. Because it's
okay.
not the same place that you left. Everybody
Yeah,
kind of thinks that London is London. No, London is not London. By the
especially
time
after
I said
COVID.
London is not London, it's already changed.
Yeah,
Maybe in a small way, but over the time of years, many, many things change. And now that COVID is there are huge amount of changes. So this is one of the things that you can do is uh, put on that investigator's hat and start looking at what's different about the UK now than it was
Yeah.
when you were there before. If you have that kind of attitude, that begins to make London a toy for you.
Hmm. I
It's
think what you're
deconstructing
trying
it.
to say is see through expectations. Many times we have this expectation, oh, if I'm going to London, this is what's likely going to happen. But that is also a fragment of our imagination. So we have no surety what we expect is going to turn out. But if you can go with an open mind without expectations, and that you're going to be enjoying the process of moving to UK.
Hmm.
And then maybe you can try a bit of positivity, just see it as a challenge, and celebrate when you are being successful.
Yeah,
um,
one of the
it's
things
just
that's really marvelous about London is there's no sheep. In New Zealand, you have to watch every step because there's likely to be a sheep pie that you have to step in. But in London, they've got different pies there to step in.
And I don't know whether that will be helpful, but for
yeah.
example, for me, I've never been to the UK. So I didn't even have a chance to go to the UK, and you have a privilege to go and travel.
Yeah, that's a
So
really good
maybe,
point. Yeah.
yeah.
it's- maybe that
So,
will be
so
helpful.
Oh,
yeah,
I like that one.
that
Yeah,
would
that
be
was
a way of
actually good.
putting
Yes, you're very
it
fortunate to get to go to London. I
yeah.
have been to London, but I haven't been to nearly enough of it because London's a really, really big place. I remember the museum and I remember the Big Ben and that kind of stuff, but mostly I was there in Hamel Hampstead.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Right. So my experience of London is very, very small, and so I too am jealous of you going to London.
Yeah.
There's so much of it there that you can enjoy.
Do you have
I
to be vaccinated to travel to the UK now, or like, do you have to do the quarantine? What are the guidelines now?
Because I'm coming in from New Zealand, and traveling via Singapore, it's only a negative COVID test before I travel and one after. Um,
Okay.
so it's not too bad.
Okay.
Again, something that I am grateful for, is that I don't have to quarantine, unless I actually have COVID. But see, as I'm saying this, I'm noticing, well, it wasn't like that, a few days ago. There was no test requirements, and now I have to pay $300 to have a test. And it's not like, uh, or even think about, well, London's fine, but actually, like, I like it here in Wellington. That's the thing I'm missing. It's like, well, that's the kind of recurring thought pattern in my head. Like, kind of
Mhm.
focusing on what I don't have as opposed to what I do,
Uh-huh.
or what I won't have, or as opposed to what I will.
I've got a question about the
Yeah.
vaccines versus the test, because that seems to be a big deal now with Biden making it um, for all the large corporations that if you have the vaccine, you're okay, but if you don't, you have to get tested once a week. I assumed blindly and stupidly that the tests for free. Now you're saying that the tests are $300. And I was wondering, what about the vaccine? I'd rather have the vaccine that if I had to pay for it than pay $300 for a test, because the test is only good for a day.
Exactly. This specific test is for, I mean, in general, in New Zealand, testing is free for controlling the pandemic. But if you're testing to travel, then they make you pay for it.
That's interesting.
Can you
Yeah.
get the vaccine before you go?
I got 1 dose, and I'm gonna get the second dose in the UK.
So I understand now that you have to be tested whether you've got the vaccine or not.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Here in Thailand, they are very strict.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is in lockdown.
Oh.
One of the things that's quite interesting is that if you go from by ferry from Koh Samui to or from here to Koh Samui or vice versa, when you get on the boat, they make you wash your hands, they take your temperature, they take your photo, and when you get off the boat, there's people over there who do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah,
And
but
so,
at least they're being responsible.
yes, so if anybody has any temperature, or they don't do actual testing, but if somebody's got a temperature, they'll stop them.
Mm, Now, actually, going back to that recurring thought, Drew, right? You
Yeah.
said you have this recurring thought of kind of bitching, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah, right. It's just not like, look, when I listen to you guys talk about London in a positive way, I feel the like positivity, and then I pay a little bit more attention, and I'm like, I hear, yeah, but New Zealand is great. Yeah, but I really like it in Wellington. Yeah, but it's that
Uh-huh.
yeah, but of like,
Here's
yeah,
one.
but this was better.
Here's one
Yeah,
more.
but
Here's one yes, but.
yeah.
Okay. The yes, but is that New Zealand is great, but if you are miserable, then you make New Zealand miserable. Or
Mhm.
the other side of it is that if London is great, but you make it in your own mind miserable, then London will be miserable. But see, this is all about your own choice about it. And so having positive thoughts about London is much more healthy, wholesome, and beneficial for you than having negative thoughts about London. And then
Yeah.
also having positive thoughts about New Zealand in relationship to the negative thoughts about London is not doing you any good.
Yeah.
So maybe you should spend a few moments talking to yourself about how terrible New Zealand is, like sheep, and how wonderful London is, and then you could begin to change your attitude about travel.
I think another thing that you can do is every time you think London is fine, but you may be asking your question. You may try and ask your question, what does fine mean to me? And how do I know that it's going to be fine? Because when you're making that inference, it's based on your past experience. But this time is most likely to be different from what you think it's going to be or how it has been. So that can use it, you can use it as a reminder to get yourself back into the present moment.
Right. That's exactly what I was mentioning before, but you're saying it in a better way than I. That's great. Yes,
So look
exactly.
for the
That's
changes.
it. Is that because now you're going back to London with expectations of what London was a long time ago, and London's not like that now.
I'm
You
Yeah.
will
also
not
going with,
pick up exactly where you left off. Things have changed.
I guess it's okay. So also going with, okay, so fine. I need to understand that London will have changed, and what I'm returning to isn't going to be what I'm familiar with, and I can kind of get
Oh,
on board with that.
I think you
Um,
understand,
yeah.
but I think it's difficult to remember that every
Oh
time.
yeah, well,
But
it's
right,
there's a second aspect to it, which is it's kind of like I saw a video of one of Dhammaratos calls, and it was kind of like the meditation thing. It was like you sometimes you have to break this habit of you finish a meditation session and you're comparing it to the last one, and you're like, this one was good and last one was bad and all that sort of stuff. I'm pretty good at not doing that with my meditation sessions, but I'm definitely not so good with doing that with like, well, where I've been living, because I'm thinking, well, this session, this place was great, and the last one was, I'm about to go into another session, and it's, I'm like not sure.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. Let's put this into gear then.
Yeah.
If talking about it in the sense of meditation practice, and this practice is not as good as it was last time,
or this practice has been so great that the next one can't be close.
All right. Either way, the whole point is that whether the meditation time is good or bad is not the issue. The issue is, can I be satisfied with it the way it is right now? Okay. If I could be satisfied with this particular moment the way that it is right now and just relax and be satisfied with it, the joy will grow. If I'm sitting here wanting joy, saying, where's my joy? I want to feel better than I do now, then that means that we're actively practicing being dissatisfied in that moment. If we can start practicing being satisfied, and one of the places of being satisfied has to do with you have to be able to feel safe. So we look around and see everything is safe right now. There's no real dangers here. There's no mother-in-law in the room. There's no snarling dogs. You've heard my rap about all of this. Okay, so we get ourselves to recognize that right now we're safe.
So I understand that when I think of safety, I think of as an antidote to, let's say, fear. But what about like upset? What's a good antidote to that? Oh, Dhammarato?
Oh, he froze. Drew, I had the same issue. Like
Yeah?
I just discussed it with him yesterday, and I was in tears because I hated it. The way he said it, like I can't let go. It feels so comfortable to feel the normal way, the miserable way, and it's so hard to let it go and like actually, I just breathe. Just breathe through this.
Right? Yeah, it's very liberating. Yeah.
Sorry, Dhammarato, we took over.
No, the internet went south, but you guys were still on. So, continuing along with what I was saying, that is, if we can practice getting ourselves into a state of satisfaction while we're practicing, then we can use that skill when we're in the airport. Because airports are places where I would say there's probably more human suffering in an airport than any other one kind of place in the world. Everybody is uptight, everybody is tense, everybody is afraid, everybody is tired, everybody wants everything to happen sooner than it does. Nobody likes to stand in line. We don't even like being around the crowd.
Leaving.
Yes.
Sometimes people are upset because they're coming.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So the vibe of an airport is tense. Mm-hmm. If you're aware of that tension in the airport, then you can be, while you're in the airport, satisfied with your level of tension, knowing that much of the tension that you're experiencing is coming from the airport itself.
Good point.
That you're in its sea, you're in its environment, and you're breathing its air, and its air is dirty and has been for months. Okay. However, knowing that you can be satisfied while you're in the airport means that now you can wake up and enjoy the experience rather than hiding from the tension. And everybody there in the airport, one of the characteristics of people in the airport is that they don't like being here. They don't want to be here. And so they're trying to at least mentally escape from being in the airport.
Mm-hmm.
What you can do instead now is that you can be satisfied that you're in the airport. You know you're going into the airport. It's a necessary part to getting back to London and all of that kind of stuff. So by being satisfied while you're in the airport, You can actually investigate the airport for what it is. Take a look. Enjoy your environment. Be there. Be there maybe even with the thought of, look at all these uptight people, but I don't have to be uptight. That's my choice.
Yeah.
And then you can actually start treating some of these uptight people in that airport with compassion that is naturally there, to understand that the airports by their nature are extraordinarily tense places.
Yeah.
If you didn't have anything at an airport but just the airport to get on an airplane, still people are afraid because of flight.
Yeah.
Everything about an airport is uptight, tense. Security, checking in, inspecting your baggage. Nobody likes it. Everybody hates an airport. And all you have to do is wake up to that and recognize, hey, I can handle this place.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be here very long, but I can be satisfied. I can be happy and joyful while I'm in an airport.
So
Even
what
though
if
all the food's expensive and I can go through a list of 10,000 things bad about an
yeah.
airport, and everybody knows it, and everybody feels bad when they're in the airport. You don't have to. You can enjoy it. Up to you.
So what's my game plan if I go in with that attitude, right? Airport's fine, I can handle it. It's going to be tense. It's kind of like this, well, yeah, tense place, right? And so if I'm feeling a little bit down, that's natural and all that sort of stuff. But like, so you probably went in to the immigration office with the game plan of, well, this is my toy, right?
Uh-huh.
But then you came out, one of the times you came out grumpy. What's the backup plan? Because I feel like I might need it.
The backup plan is that if you get grumpy, get out of the situation that you're grumpy. For instance, if you are having trouble checking in, a lot of us get really in a hurry when we're checking in. If you're getting grumpy while you're checking in, you can say, wait a minute, let me go stand at the back of the line and cool off, because at the back of the line, at least I'm safe.
Or what about, sorry, not grumpy, but let's say upset at like the thought of leaving my friends?
Well, it's all, I would call any time that you're dissatisfied, there's grumpy in there. But
yeah, I think people have this natural fear of change, and that can sometimes manifest as upset. Our brain is so sophisticated, it's going to disguise all negative emotions as much as it can. So it's like you said, it's natural to feel upset. You can cultivate that view, but I think one thing that you can do is watch out for the tendency to be upset about the fact that you're upset, right? So often that causes extra trouble, right? So if you're upset, it can be useful for you to see it as upset and leave it at that. If you can, if you have the resource, you can try to cultivate some positivity. But many a times, emotions get so overwhelming, we don't have that energy to be very deliberate about it. In that case, I think you can distract yourself with something more tangible, like reading a book, listening to something.
A latte.
A latte.
Yeah, a latte.
Okay. What you're saying is absolutely correct. Let me see if I can put it into a slightly different kind of language here. And that is that when we are grumpy or upset, normally, because of Dhamma and all kinds of other stuff, we tell ourselves, you're not supposed to be upset. You shouldn't be upset. Well, that you're supposed to not be upset is just more of that critical parent. It's a law or a rule that you're breaking. And now that you're breaking it and feeling bad because you're breaking a rule, you've got to feel bad about that too. And so we do double whammy. Instead, if you find that yourself are being upset in the traveling, then the way to handle that is by saying, it's okay that I'm upset. Wow, what a tough business this is.
Yeah.
And even though I'm upset, I'll make it through. We'll get through this.
And that is that,
and so you
is that a
become
different form of
satisfied.
satisfaction?
Yes,
Because
that's when you begin to note, when you nourish yourself, that it's okay that you're upset. This is a tense situation. You'll get by just fine. These are nourishing thoughts as opposed to the critical thoughts. You're not supposed to be upset. Buck up and
yeah,
get over this.
yeah,
Is the parental critical way of saying it, rather than the nurturing way of saying it is that, yeah, it's okay that you're upset. I mean, airports are terrible places. Everybody gets upset in an airport. There's no reason to for you to be
Mm-hmm.
hard on yourself because you're just being like everybody else does. Why don't you just take a deep breath and relax?
yeah,
Yeah.
Recognize that you're upset, and that's okay. Relax, relax. And so we keep going back to that quality of nurturing.
nurture.
Nurture yourself as opposed to being critical on yourself. And we
Mm-hmm.
need to do that in both of the cases, both in the case of the, let us call it the private practice or the seclusion.
Hmm.
And then we have to, by getting fairly good at that in our own secluded place, that gives us now the strength and the power or the skills to go actually to a real airport.
Mm-hmm.
So what you can do is you can actually, while you're sitting in meditation, of giving yourself a dry run in the sense of mentally going through the process of arriving at the airport, putting your luggage down, saying hi to the captain there at the
Hmm.
front door, meeting the people who are standing around the door with a great big smile, and taking a deep breath and walking right into that hell we call an airport, knowing that you can handle this, okay? And so you take this time to build yourself a scenario before you actually go to the real
Yeah,
airport. You talk to yourself about how marvelous it's going to be and how easily you're going to be able to handle it,
yeah.
knowing
Right.
that the real airport is not going to be your fantasy. It's going to be real, but at least you can practice for it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So a more positive spin would be to celebrate that you have the skills to deal with whatever that situation presents to you,
yeah.
right? And then you feel confident and you can take the risk of being not okay.
Now you're
Yeah.
sounding just like me.
Oh yeah.
I
Well,
actually I had
yeah.
a morbid thought, and I thought it might be it might instill fear instead, but I'll
Go
try
on.
it. So when you when you're standing there so miserable, about to, like, check in and stuff, like you can die, right? You can,
Yeah.
the plane can go down, and you're on that plane, and then you think to yourself, so I can die in like an hour when I board this plane. Is it worth for me to be so upset right now? Because I
That's a
have
good one.
this
Yeah,
I have this
that
system.
is so funny. I hear what you're saying now, finally. Yeah. Why should I feel now standing in line here in the airport when an hour from
Right.
now that plane could go down and I'd be dead? At
Yeah.
least I'm
Yeah.
alive right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It might instill more fear, but it's just the
No,
way
I
of
like
like.
that one. I can handle that one. That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. That's really a kind of an important point. A lot of people in the West misunderstand the First Noble Truth as dukkha, as life is suffering. And life is not at all suffering. We actually quite enjoy being alive. I'm actually enjoying being alive right now. This is quite nice being alive. I mean,
Mhm.
I would rather be alive right now than this mouse connected to the computer. It does not
Yes.
have a life of its own, believe me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so with this quality is that it's not life is suffering, but rather um, it's what we're doing that causes the suffering. And the causes of suffering would be like going into the airport, wanting the airport to be different. You want it to be a happy place, and it's not.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's going to be your suffering, is by wanting the airport to be different than it is. But we already know what airports are. And it's not going to be different than what you think it's going to be. It is going to be the uptight, miserable place that everybody thinks it is. And because, in fact, everybody thinks that airports are uptight, miserable places, they create that uptight, miserable situation, and you have that choice also. You can either walk into the airport and let it be whatever airports are and be satisfied with that, or you can go into the airport wanting the airport to be different than it is, and it's not, which means now you're adding your own layer of suffering to it. That's dissatisfied with the airport rather than being satisfied with it in all of its misery, all of its warts, and we can still be satisfied with this present moment, even when we're standing in a long line at the airport. That this present moment is an okay moment.
Yeah.
And so when you get to the airport and you start practicing that on the airport, that will be a very, very good practice. You can practice it at 2. You can practice it at the airport in New Zealand, and you can practice it at Gatwick when you arrive.
Yeah.
And then you'll be ready to do exactly that same thing with London itself.
Yeah.
You can handle London's airport. You can handle Heathrow. You can handle London.
It's true.
Oh my
Right.
God.
I'm gonna have to bounce off because I need to pack and then sleep.
All
Maybe
right.
do some meditation. But thank you guys. I really appreciate this.
This is great.
Oh,
You enjoy your trip.
Thank you.
Actually enjoy it. You can. You can say to yourself, I'm going to like this. I'm going to be satisfied and joyful no matter how tough this airport trip thing is.
Yeah.
lots of
I'll give
love
that a
to
shot.
you, Drew.
I'd
Thank you.
really like to hear from you when you get there. I want to make sure that you didn't fly into the kind of airplane that
I know I was talking about earlier. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I'll have to figure out the time zones but yeah, I'll give you a ring. Thanks.
Keep
And
in
And I'll
touch.
probably see all of you. Hopefully, see all of you next weekend. But
I'm not worried.
but no, I'm just thinking. Depends on where I am and who I'm visiting and if I have the internet and all that sort of stuff. But it should be fine. I'll deal with it.
You'll be fine. You
Yeah.
can deal with it. I'm sure you can.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, guys.
Bye,
We'll
Drew.
see you.
Thanks, Mike. Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Well, guys, as you know, when we're talking about that whole show at the airport, we're not really talking about an airport at all. We're talking about every moment that we're out there.
That's true.
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
the airport is Tong Salah, which is a little town here on the island.
Yeah, the specifics can change. It can be different environment, but the strategies to take care of our mental health at every moment is the same.
It's the same, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something just kind of interesting we've talked about before, that a lot of people in psychology think that all of these problems are solved in the office with the psychologist.
Oh, no way.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. No, no. The best we could do in the psychologist's office is to figure out how we're going to handle out there every moment. And this is where the practice comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yes.
to be able to practice. And one of the things to do is to practice these scenarios, I guess is the right word to do it. That if we know that we're going to go to the visa office, then I'm practicing before I go there. I'm going to be able to handle everything. And when I went, it was just like I had planned on, because I had worked it out that I'm going to be in really, really great condition, really good shape to handle this. And so this is getting that scenario going. So another example would be an interview for a job.
Yeah.
I have one student who came back from the interview, and he said 2 things about it. One is they gave him the job right there in the interview, and number 2 is that the interviewer was surprised at how relaxed he was. Well, that's what he had done, is he had practiced being able to do the interview relaxed.
Yeah.
and all the other applicants because for them that interview was really important to do a
Mm-hmm.
good job in the interview. And here they are all uptight doing a good job in the interview, and he's in there having a ball with the interview.
Yeah, yeah.
He's relaxed and he's enjoying the interviewer, and the interviewer is so impressed with his ability to handle an interview they gave him a job on the spot.
Yeah. Something similar happened to me actually. I was like, it was my first interview, but it went really well. And at one point when I was really anxious, I had the decision of trying to hide it or just calling it out, you know. So I said, here comes anxiety, and we managed to have a laugh about it, right? So instead of me being anxious and trying to manipulate myself, kind of navigated that well. So yeah,
Well, I would
practice
imagine that
makes
in
perfect.
your case, the interviewer knew what she was doing, and that she was quite impressed that you knew what you were doing in that moment of
Yeah.
recognizing that you had actually gotten yourself anxious and uptight, and you're willing to be able to see that and deal with it in the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is that's what real life is all about. But instead, we get the idea that life is dukkha. All going to the airport is dukkha. Going to these interviews are dukkha. No, the interview is not going to be dukkha. You're taking the dukkha into the interview.
Yeah.
I started this habit, I guess, when I tell myself that I have to do something, I stop for a second and I ask myself, do I really want to do it? would I want to do it? and
Mm-hmm.
and
That's
that kind
very
of gives
good.
gives me a little space to like, yeah, let me try instead of oh
That's
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. Yeah.
miserable.
So yeah, so you're exercising deliberation, right? You're making choice. You're telling yourself, yeah, this I think is going to be enjoyable for me right now. So that is very, yeah, that's very positive.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Which is that cliche that I use is turn every important thing into a toy.
Yeah.
That's
And so
true.
this guy was able to turn that interview into a toy. He was actually able to go in. Okay, this toy is my job or my my task or my thing to do is to be relaxed. I can do this relaxed. And he was so
Yeah.
well relaxed that he got the job just because he was relaxed, and all the other applicants were uptight and tense.
That's what attachment does.
Hmm. And so the interview, that's so hard for people to understand because it's just well known that interviews are tense situations.
Yeah.
No, they're not. The tension is all optional.
Yes. That's up to you, right? So
Hmm.
people often don't acknowledge how much power they have over their near future.
Hmm.
And that's the freedom, but it comes with the cost of responsibility as well. You know, sometimes when my flight mode is kicked in, you know, I'm stressed and I want to escape the stress. I think, oh, if I was a kid when I had no responsibilities, and then I remember, oh, there was no freedom. So there's a choice. We can be free, but we do have to make the right choices to sustain that freedom.
You know, that's exactly right. What you're actually saying is that when we are raised as a victim, we are raised without freedom. What in fact a victim is the one who has no freedom.
Hmm.
And that the winner then is the one who has the freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the one who is not a victim. That in fact it's almost like that what creates the victimhood is the loss of freedom.
Hmm.
And when we regain that attitude that I can handle this, then we actually gain that responsibility that
Yeah.
we can handle it rather than running away from it or being trapped by it. And so
Yeah.
this is all really interrelated. There's just so many different ways
Hmm.
of looking at it, but it really is down to the point that at every moment we've got a choice.
Hmm. Yeah.
Every moment we've got a choice. Go ahead.
Can we take a look at my little thought pattern here? So I tend to find myself a little further away in the future when I catch myself overthinking, and that being in the future actually gives me more pleasure because I have, I guess, more expectations, bigger expectations there, and as if it's better than now. Then I tell myself, but I need to be here now. So that's kind of a little kind of jerk, like a little jerk movements that I don't really like. Then I try to like it, like say, okay, yes, you're right. That I need to be in the present moment, and then I try to kind of talk myself into enjoying it, but it's still not the same as I would be really enjoying
Okay.
it.
I understand what you're saying. Perhaps going back to using the word nurturing then, as opposed to talking yourself into it, because oftentimes we try to talk ourselves into feeling good the exact same way that we talked ourselves into feeling bad, which is being critical. And we often then are now critical in the sense you ought to be feeling good right now. Why the hell are you feeling bad when you could feel good? But you hear the criticism in there, and so naturally the little child is going to feel even worse because now he's been caught doing something wrong. No, the way that I'm talking about talking ourselves into feeling good is nurturing in the sense of everything is all right. Yeah, it's all right. You're uptight right now. Yeah, that's okay. Take a deep breath. Everything's going to be all right. Everything is fine right now. Become satisfied and relaxed, even when you just told yourself that you're uptight and you ought to relax. See, if you tell yourself that you're uptight and you want to relax, it's hard to relax. But when you say, "Yeah, you're uptight, but that's okay. That's no problem. Everything is all right. Be uptight for a little while, and then you can relax, and everything will be all right."
So it's not even about what you should be thinking or what thoughts are in your head. It's about just it's all right to think, and you can be you, but it's good to relax.
Yeah.
You already are acceptable the way that you are. You're already good enough. You already passed the test. You're already in the club.
Oh my god, why is it so hard to believe this?
Well, these are just nurturing thoughts that I'm having. These are just nurturing thoughts. That's all they are. You're already there. You're already in the club.
No, we've been
You've
here.
already passed
So
the test.
one thing that you can use as a cue, maybe think about, so you have a preference for imagining your future, right? And that can be a very good exercise for establishing goals. But you do have to then come back to the present moment and say, okay, my present is very, very intertwined with the future. So I'm going to do things in the present moment that is going to help me achieve my goal in the future. And then you do not deny, you don't stop your inner child from imagining the future, but you reason with it and tell it, okay, let's take a look at the present and be skillful in the present moment so that we can achieve those future goals. Maybe you can try that and see how it works, if it works for you or not.
Yeah, what I can do today to bring that future on.
Yeah. These are
Anna, I'm actually, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that these are really complicated, and they need some time, for you to be very skillful in that bringing back to the present moment. It takes some time, but with repetition, we're going to get there.
That's right. Over and over again, we repeat. Everything's all right. Everything is fine. What a nice day this is. Everything's going to work out. There's no problems, no worries, no place to go, nothing to do,
Mm-hmm.
and everything is all right now. Okay. Even if I'm uptight, I can still tell myself that, but by the time I've told myself that, I'm probably not nearly as uptight as I was if I'd have been telling myself, you ought to stop being so uptight all the time. But just instead, let's have these wholesome, nurturing thoughts. Everything's all right. Oh, what a nice day this is, etc. This is how we practice over and over again. Everything is all right. Everything is fine.
Lost you for a second.
So, Anna, I want to tell you that I'm really pleased with you. I'm really proud of you. You're in there. You keep going, girl. You keep at it. You're going to be all
Yeah.
right.
Keep going, girl.
It's seemingly such an easy thing to do, and I can't believe myself that I have such a hard time. I usually get, well, see, that's my thinking here. I usually get stuff done. Like,
Uh-huh.
if I need to learn something, I just go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
here it's completely different approach of actually like loving it to do, like giving
Mm-hmm.
myself a freedom to like be okay, and that's so liberating and relaxing, and I can't believe I've been missing it all my life.
Guess what? You're not the only one who spent many years uptight.
Right.
Many years of telling myself, stop being so uptight. That's terrible. You should stop it.
Yep.
Really? Well,
Because
how?
conditioning is so thick, right? We have been told for so many years, right? Majority of our lives to behave and think in a certain way. And now suddenly we come across this new way. So novelty is definitely a bit, what is going on? It kind of
Mhm.
throws people off.
So, Dhammarato, do you know how, like, on average, how long does it take for a person who calls you to actually act upon, like, to actually switch the thinking into nurturing thinking, and the nurture, not even thinking, but yeah, but like treating yourself better? Like, how
Abs-
long?
Absolutely, everyone can do it.
Yeah.
And how long it takes you to develop the habit is unique for each individual person. An
Mm-hmm.
example is that some people call me and get what I'm talking about, and they don't need to call back. Other people don't understand what I'm talking about, and they don't call back either.
Mm-hmm.
Another kind of person, though, is the one like you that keeps calling back and keeps calling back and keeps getting better and better at it, slowly, slowly over time. And then within a few months, it's automatic, it's all of a sudden like something miraculous has happened. This is, in fact, the story of Danny that we've been talking about, that this happened to him. It just
Yeah.
happened to him 3 years ago. And here you are going through it again. And
Yep.
congratulations, you can make it. You can come through this.
Yeah, I'm already, I can feel sometimes, I can definitely feel how playful I can be with life, and then I go back, and then there's still like this movement back
Sometimes
and
you
forth.
feel like a nut, and sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
That's just that's the major teaching of the Buddha is in Nietzsche, but we have to understand that he's talking about it in a very, very profound way, rather than an ordinary sense of, yeah, everything's changing. I know I'm a physicist and I know all about electricity and I know what change is all about, and it doesn't help me feel better at all. But there's another way of looking at this issue of change, and that is that whatever it is that I call me is constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
that means that we need to, on a regular basis, take a good look, investigate again,
Mm-hmm.
ask how you're feeling, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. And with the standards that we have of knowing that, hey, I can, in fact, have nurturing thoughts rather than critical thoughts, then I can change those thoughts over and over again from nurturing to critical until till the nurturing thoughts begin to get like, wow, what a relief. Wow, I couldn't believe how great things really actually are. That the present moment is actually quite a wonderful thing. Being alive is marvelous.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's
Yeah.
really, really kind of wholesome that we're talking about here. And that's how you begin to look at the world of what a marvelous place this is and how I feel so marvelous is almost a big surprise to me over and over again. Yet another wow, how good things really are. Pleasantly surprised again at how good things are.
Mhm.
But that's just an attitude. It's still just an attitude because I can go back and have the old attitude of ain't immigration police terrible monsters. They don't know what they're
Yeah.
doing.
I think we can talk about process orientation and goal orientation here. So, goal orientation would be I want to achieve a state where I'm in bliss all the time. But the process orientation would be okay, that's my goal, but I'm going to take a look at the process, like whatever I'm doing right now. Right. And that is probably a better idea because if you enjoy it in the present moment, you're likely to remember the learnings, the decisions you made, the emotions you had in the next moment. So you kind of hack your brain into enjoying the present moment so that you remember it more, and it makes you easier to repeat all of those skills.
Mm-hmm.
I see Dhammarato have it a laugh.
When you were talking about that, I had the mental image of riding a train, and there's two
Uh-huh.
passengers on the train. One of
Uh-huh.
them is looking at his ticket, he's looking at the map, he's looking at his watch, he's talking to the conductor, and he says, "When are we going to get there?" The other one is on the other side of the train looking out the window and enjoying the ride.
Yeah.
Okay?
Absolutely.
How are you going to live your life? Are you going to be on the train of life looking out the window, or in our case, looking in the window and seeing what's going on in there, as opposed to trying to get this over with?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very. That's quite a metaphor there. The
Yeah,
wanting. Yeah.
just enjoy the train ride. We're on the train of life. Just
No.
Mhm.
Okay.
take a
Now
look.
another, maybe like out of like right hand issue here. Like so the money, right?
Mhm.
It's a necessary aspect of things. Now I understand that even thinking of money gives me a straightforward anxiety. Like just even if I have money, I still if I think
It
of it,
depends upon what you have as a thought of money. That you said
yeah.
every time I think of money, well,
Mm-hmm.
we can think of money as a great big pile of green paper sitting on a pallet.
Mm-hmm.
We can think of a great big bank vault full of money. There's many
Mm-hmm.
different things, but when you think of money, you think
Mm-hmm.
of money that you don't have and you want.
Mm-hmm.
And there's where the anxiety is not a thought of money.
Okay.
It's a thought of I need something I don't have.
Okay.
Instead of something that you just know exists. Money just exists. One of the things that you can count on is that right now I can look at the video and see that you're fairly well fed, you're fairly healthy. I don't see money as making you completely impoverished.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I know people who can become completely impoverished and they still don't have the anxiety about money that you do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's not the money that gives you the anxiety, but it's the kind of thoughts you have that give you anxiety. And you said it's thoughts of money, but thoughts of money, I mean, I'm thinking about money that I've got so much of it that I'm throwing it in the air saying, whippy! And that's just a thought. And you're having the thought of, I ain't got none. Where's my money? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 This ain't. Yeah. Of lack of money. I guess this is the thought.
Yeah, so you're thinking of lack of money and that that's dangerous. And so you're actually giving yourself
Yeah.
dangerous thoughts.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that's very interesting about those dangerous thoughts, you probably had those dangerous thoughts about money sitting in the very chair that you're sitting in now before. And yet you
Yeah.
did not jump up and immediately race to the bank. You would rather sit there and feel bad about money than going and doing something about it.
Mm-hmm.
When we recognize that I'm not going to go and do anything about this money, why should I sit here and feel bad about it?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then the answer to that, well, something may happen in the future. The answer to that is yes, and if it does, I'll be able to handle it very well. If I can handle my moment of worrying about money right now and stop myself from being worried about money, then when real money issues come up in a present moment of that kind, I can handle that too.
So it goes back to that self-preservation instinct and the need for security.
Right, no money, no me.
Yeah.
Which can all, that's actually a Thai joke that I just rearranged. No money, no honey.
Oh.
Yeah, you hear that at the brothels. But anyway, uh, back to the point of that our society is built upon the premise of the rich taking advantage of the poor. This is what capitalism is all about. Or in many cases, the rich taking advantage of more stupid rich people. They would rather, in fact, take advantage of the rich because you only have to screw over one man to get $100,000 if he's rich, to where you may have to screw over 1,000 people just to get $100 each one of them from. So it's a whole lot easier for the rich to steal from the rich, and boy, they're good at it.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that almost no one starves to death by not working, and yet our culture says is you don't work, you don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
But the only people who can guarantee that are slavers. The only ones who can guarantee that are the ones who have complete authority over you. And in fact, you can quit your job and immediately go to the sandwich shop. They are not connected. You don't work and you don't eat are completely not connected, and yet you're making the connection. If you don't work, you don't have money, you don't eat, therefore I don't even have to worry about the job. All I have to do is worry about the money and I can feel bad. So you're just making a shortcut into bad feelings. When you can think of money and think of it as paper airplanes that you could throw from the top of the building. Here, this is $1,000 bill. Let me pull this up. I'll throw that one too. Begin to have the mental imagery that money is not dangerous and not having it is not dangerous. That another way of looking at it is that you can be confident and secure and comfortable with very little.
And I've been there. I've practiced it. I lived through it, and I still don't believe it, you know?
Yeah, Well, that's because you keep telling yourself that which you don't believe. You keep feeling bad when you think of money as if it were scarce, that there's not enough of it. And I'm offering you the opportunity to say that you can be satisfied with what you have. And you can have mental imagery of making it fun. Thinking of money as something that's fun to play with rather than some monster.
Okay, so
and then
what will
of
be
course celebrate.
what will be the plan of action? So
Well, for
I
rich
need to know
people,
what.
the money is still a monster. It doesn't matter how much money you have, money is a monster. That in fact, the more you have of it, the more you want. Isn't that generally the case? The
Oh,
wealthy
absolutely.
really want more money. They never have enough of it. And yet every one of us thinks that money will gain us security. That's one of the social lies. There is, perhaps you both heard the story. There's a story, I forgot who wrote it, but it's a very old book. It's a little book, and it's called The Prince and the Pauper.
Oh, yeah. It's a French
It's a
author.
French book, right? And the story is that a young boy who was very, very streetwise, something like an Oliver Twist, that he was identified and caught They figured out who his real parents were, and his parents said, yes, this is the kid because he had a tattoo or a birthmark or something like that, that he was, in fact, the long-lost prince that had been lost about the same time as this kid was. So everything fit, and they could prove that this kid, this street urchin who was streetwise, was, in fact, the long-lost prince. They bring him into the palace. They scrub him up, put fine clothes on him, and put a guard with him, a whole regiment of guards. He's got his own police force. And after a while in the book, this kid begins to figure out that he was actually better off out on the street. That this palace is dangerous. And not only that, but it's got no freedom. And nobody's happy in this palace. And so the next part of the book is that he escapes from the palace. And he goes back out on the street where he can be happy.
And he's finally happy, yeah.
Uh-huh. And there's another twin story, and we know about this twin story. This twin story actually comes from Chiang Tzu. And we know that he was actually, basically, he was a kind of a minor official in one of the districts of China way, way back when, 2,000 or so years ago, maybe 2,500 years ago. And that the new emperor was looking for workers who would come to the palace and do a good job. And so they sent emissaries to Chiang Tzu to get him to become one of the government ministers. And he says, we'll come back tomorrow. And they came back tomorrow, and they found him fishing. He wasn't ready for them at all. He didn't have any fine clothes or anything. He was gone fishing, and they came and they found him fishing. And he told them the story about the white sacred turtle, which is the story that I want to tell you. The kids in China found a turtle that was an albino, completely white. The child who found it immediately picked up this turtle and took it to the village. And the village, everybody was impressed with this. And over time, they built a shrine for this turtle. They built a little pond in this temple, and there they ensconced this white turtle who had a beautiful gold-gilded pond to live in. And on one occasion, one of the attendants or workers or whatever left a board laying in the water that gave the turtle a chance to crawl out of his temple-like beautiful shrine pond. And as he was leaving the temple and walking out, a rabbit asked him, don't you like your fine temple? Don't you like the palace that they have built for you? And he says, no, I'm just a turtle, and I'd rather be dragging my tail through the mud than being the emperor of the temple and shrine. Okay, and so this is what Chiang Tzu told them as the story about, man, you are not going to get me into that palace. Because he would rather be just a turtle dragging his tail through the mud happily.
Yeah.
Okay, so I took that for myself also, that I really would prefer not to become famous. I don't want them to ensconce me into some shrine. That I would rather have the freedom to just spread the Dhamma and just go around doing it like that, with no concern about the money or the opulence or wanting any value out of it. That everything right now is just okay. And right now, Anna, everything about your life is marvelous. It's okay. And yet you are making yourself miserable when you think about money, when in fact money's not a problem for you. I can look at the way you're dressed and the house you're in and the expression on your face and all of that and tell you right now, I can see money is not your issue. Worrying about money is your issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. But the thing is, I always come as a source for others. Like people come and ask for money from me, and I always give it away.
Okay. And you're worrying about money and you're
And
here giving it away happily. The question is, can you
that's
give it away happily, or do you say, oh, poor me, I'm giving away something that's important to me?
I am giving away it happily, and I don't expect it coming back. However, recently I had and usually it comes back because it's kind of a common courtesy. But in my last relationship, I am I'm concerned that I went a little out of my way, and I'm not getting anything back. So, and I'm trying to kind of all right, whatever. It's just
Well, sometimes you win a few, you lose a few. Easy come, easy go, and you can keep that memory with the fond memories of, hey, I was able to give money away without getting any of it back, and I'm still okay. Or you can feel bad and say, I gave money away and I didn't get it back, and now I'm feeling miserable. That's your choice, because see, you can't change the past. The past
yeah,
is
Yeah.
the past.
Yeah,
yeah. But
exactly.
And you have a choice of how you're going to feel about the past right now. When you
Hmm.
think of the
Hmm.
past, when you think about that guy ripped me off, he borrowed money from me and he's not paying me back. I hate him. And all you're doing is hating yourself.
Yeah.
yeah,
But when
So
you're
you
saying,
you
congratulations, I can give money away and not get it back and it don't bother me.
Mhm. So Anna, by the way you describe this experience, I have this idea. I get the idea that you have already learned something out of this experience, which is maybe sometimes it is good for you to say no, which is completely fine, right? So you have probably learned that lesson, and that is going to help you in the future. But you already also have learned something which is at the level of emotions, right? That
hmm
I should feel bad because I gave away money. So here maybe it's useful for you to see that what kind of learning you choose to retain and what kind of learning is not serving you and you do not engage with it. Does that make sense to you?
yeah, yeah. I absolutely, yeah. I absolutely experience as a new way of learning, living. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I can duplicate the lesson I received, and then next time I see that this is the
Yeah,
way it's going.
but
Uh,
yeah, but go on.
okay, I don't know whether this issue comes in, but I tend to save on myself, and that's why I can have collection, some extra that I can give away, but I will never say no to others to if they.
Congratulations. The next knock at your door will be my fist.
What is this issue that I'm this is so interesting. I just started noticing this, that I
Yeah.
can.
That's what this
What is?
practice is all about, is to begin to notice things that have been
Mhm.
there all along. That's
Mhm.
why in common culture we call it subconscious, is because we're
Yeah.
just not paying attention to it.
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
you're waking up,
absolutely.
you're paying attention to it. Congratulations. This is what I've been on about, is that you're beginning to see what's there. And that's marvelous that you're waking up, but some of the stuff you're seeing you don't like so much.
Mhm.
I know. And where do I need to? What kind of change? I'm learning. There are lessons, and I'm grateful for them all. And yet, sometimes it's painful for me to realize that I'm just ripping myself off by helping some other person that will never probably help me ever in return. And why am
Okay,
I
Mhm.
even expecting?
but it's not the money, it's the fact that you're spreading joy. That spreading the joy is more important than spreading the money, but we have that mistake in Western society of thinking that you can make somebody joyful by giving them money, and that may not be the case at all. But
Okay.
some cases, giving them joy rather than money would be the right thing to do. Or another way is give them both money and joy.
Yeah.
That they come for money, but what they get is the joy. And the money is optional.
How do we do that?
Well, just like we've been doing it here, you have to practice joy. I mean, think about that. That's a scenario. I have the imagination. The next time someone comes to you for money, how are you going to respond? Set
Well,
up the scenario. How are you going to respond? Because you've got a choice, and you can make that choice kind of in advance. And so when somebody comes for the money, says, "Hot dog, I've been waiting on you. I'm ready for you."
now I feel like I want to be very cautious. Now I feel like I don't want to trust as much to, I just not, like, I want to close up now instead of,
I understand that. And that's a natural. Remember the whole point about Anicca. Remember the whole point about sometimes you feel open and sometimes you feel closed. That's okay. Be satisfied with what you are in any particular moment. That it's okay for you to close down and not give out money because you feel that you've been burned. But the other part that I'm mentioning is that you can go through that whole process in a satisfied way, or you can go through that process dissatisfied. This is your choice. So when people come to borrow money, you can tell them no and be joyful and happy with them, or you can tell them yes and be joyful and happy with them. But the money, like I say, is optional. But the skill is the skill of being able to handle that situation, and the situation of somebody going to borrow money from you is very much like you being stranded in the airport. Going back to the earlier part of our conversation, it's the same thing. When somebody comes for money, they're in pain. They would have not come for you for money if they didn't have a problem. And
well,
so,
they don't even come. It's just me being generous, like, because I have and I can share.
all right, well,
But
be
at that
generous
point,
with your joy.
Yeah, and I think you
They need
remember
your joy
Dhammarato,
more than they need your money. Go ahead, Don.
Dhammarato, we spoke about this generosity and compassion and its relation to self-preservation. I think Anna could benefit from that lesson that you were telling the other day, that compassion doesn't mean when I see somebody drowning, I also get off the boat and join him. It means I stay in the boat and I throw the rope to him. So you don't have to drain yourself financially to be generous. You can make sure that you can sustain yourself and then be generous. So that's a little bit of moderation going on, but the feeling of compassion or generation is the same no matter how much you give, how many times you give. In that present moment, that feeling of generosity that you're experiencing is the same.
Yeah, and that feeling is good. And
Yeah.
it's a very pleasant feeling.
Exactly. It certainly is. And that feeling can be expressed as the Pali word mudita, which means that it's now to be spread back. So then, in fact, that's the whole point about the generosity. You're giving something to make someone feel better, which is the money, because of their and our society's confusion that getting money is a pleasurable thing to do, where in fact it may not be.
Yeah.
Especially if you're signing away your life. I mean, selling your soul to the devil or mortgaging your soul or all of that kind of stuff. And I'm not talking about actualities. I'm talking about the way we feel about it, the way we feel about money. Okay. And that the way that you can begin to cultivate that is that you're satisfied with the amount of money that you have. And if you're wanting to spread joy, then spread joy. You don't have to give away money to spread joy.
Yeah, I understand. I feel like
That often it's not the money. Sometimes
Yeah,
people will receive money and be joyful, and sometimes people will receive your gift and resent you for it. You
yeah.
cannot control how other people are going to respond. You can't control how other people feel. You can't control other people's thoughts, but you
Well,
can
it
control
almost,
your own.
yeah, it makes me, I guess, feel more like empowered, I guess, when I help others. And that's like selfish.
Right. Okay. So be powerful and give them marvelous gifts of smile. Give them a $5 smile or a 5 rupee smile. That if you're wanting to spread joy, spread joy.
Mhm.
Money is a poor substitute for joy. People have been trying it for centuries, and we look at the society we built and with that
No,
opinion.
it's true because you want to be like giving something tangible, not this, folklore,
Isn't them
joyful,
feel? Wait a
that
minute. Tangible.
tangible,
Money
like that
often
helps.
is not tangible. Money itself is often just a number on a piece of paper or a number on your
Yeah.
screen. It's not tangible, but a
Mhm.
smile, a warm hug, a compliment,
Yeah.
congratulating someone, that's
Mhm.
tangible and they get it and they feel it.
Mhm.
That
If we
often
take this
it's
to the
more tangible
extreme,
than money. So be
Mhm.
careful
yeah.
about giving something tangible because you are giving something tangible. You're giving joy, you're giving love, you're giving uh, happiness.
Mhm.
And that is in much more short supply than money. I mean, the world's just awash with money, and everybody's
Yeah.
still unhappy. But that's part of the, let us call it the human um, delusion that we're in, is the connection of money and happiness. The connection, the false connection that money is security. That
Mhm.
that in fact people who don't have any money at all will say, if I had some money, I'd feel secure. But they don't feel secure. They have the thought, if I had more money, I'd feel secure.
Mhm.
And finally, they wind up with a huge, huge, huge amount of money. They may have 7 or 8 digits on that piece of paper that they see on the screen and they still feel insecure. That's what the whole story about the prince and the pauper was. That kid was out on the street better off as a street urchin than he was in the palace. The palace was a miserable place, and yet everybody wants in the palace and everybody wants off the street.
Well, they have two differentiation in happiness in Greek. I think it's eudaimonic and hedonic.
Yeah.
The
Wonders.
Okay,
the
I'm
the
listening.
hedonic happiness is the material happiness, and it's prone to you prone to develop hedonic adaptation. So the more you have, the more you want. Like you
Hmm.
got a new
Mhm.
car, and then it gets old, and you want another one. Now there's a
And Jay Leno has 16 cars.
yeah, and eudaimonic happiness is the one that's exactly the soul based, the spirit, the richness of interaction, the
Yeah.
relationship you have with others, and that's what we're poor in, I guess, mostly.
Yes, and that whole point though is that we need to move our mind state out of the issue that money brings happiness into the mind state that, hey, the happiness is here if I make it. Money is optional.
Hmm.
Mhm.
The money is actually optional.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
so
next time.
getting it can become a
Mhm.
game, it can become a toy. It's not important. The money's not important.
No, no. So the next time I catch myself of thinking of lack of money, do I just take a breath in and say, well, I don't have
I'm
to think
okay.
of it?
I'm
I'm
all
okay.
right now. I've got enough right now. Let's
Yeah.
not worry about future money. What we've got right now is okay. I'm satisfied.
Mhm.
This is
That's
good
a
enough.
good one.
This is fine. This is enough. That actually, I would say that's possibly one of the most important words for people to learn. The word
Yeah.
enough.
Enough, yeah.
Enough. Enough already.
Mm-hmm.
I've got enough now. I'm satisfied with this. Polau is the way they say it in Thailand.
Right.
Polau. That's enough.
And that concept is very it used to be woven into the fabric of Indian lifestyle.
Yes,
There were clear
it was, and
stages.
it's law. I mean, that's one of the problems with Asia is it's become westernized.
Yeah. So in India, it's a very common practice for people at a certain age to leave their worldly pursuits and just go into a monastery or a retirement home and practice spirituality. And that used to be a very common thing. Not anymore, though. Uh, but
It's
it's,
still actually quite common in Thailand that, in fact, the
oh,
whole
wow.
culture has to do with the retirement. He,
Hmm.
the property owner, the landowner, the businessman, whatever, he gives it all to his family with
Right.
enough to go build a little hut in the
Hmm.
temple. And so every temple in Thailand has all of these little huts that the guys who built them have died, and they're there for the young people to come and move into.
Wow.
Okay, so that's actually quite common.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's a common thing in India, and as you say, it's become because of the commercialization and the
Hmm.
westernization of the old practices. But that's part of the old practice is to get what you needed out of life so that you can retire and enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
And in the West, when they retire, they don't know what to do with themselves, and so they wind up
Yeah.
dying
Yeah.
early because their whole identity was in the
Because
work.
yeah, it's because it's flipped, right? Previously, in the Asian way, it used to be you enjoy your life, but at a certain point, you have to start giving up and stop chasing for better or for more. But in the Western society, it has become how much can I suffer right now and work right now so that I can have more when I retire. So
Mhm.
that's a weird flip between the
Mm.
two systems. So yeah, after retirement, you often see people not being able to enjoy just because they're old, their faculties are not as
and,
good as they
and
used
their
to be.
habit patterns are set in
Yeah, yeah,
tight. The old
yeah,
habit,
absolutely.
and there's chemical reactions with this. You know that in the adrenaline system,
Hmm.
that there's also cortisol,
Yeah.
and that elderly people wind up because that chemical doesn't break down as easily as adrenaline. This is
Hmm.
why old people are known to. They even have movies by the name of grumpy old men. When people get old, they get grumpy.
Yeah.
And that's especially true in the West because they don't
Right.
they're grumpy on and on and on and on, building up that cortisol so that when they get 65, nobody wants to be around these guys, not even each other.
Yeah.
You got two old men just angry at each other like this, and that's their whole relationship.
Well, I would like to have retired people still being a part of a community, like yeah,
Yeah.
a bigger community, not per se a retirement center, like uh, and not integrated into. How are retirement centers integrated into community in India? Maybe I don't know that. Are they
It's at
completely
home.
separate?
Generally, it's at home, as opposed
Okay.
Yeah.
to then. In fact, here in Thailand, for instance, there's almost, but there are a few, but there are so few of them that they are remarkable because they're there, and that is retirement villages, retirement homes, and that kind of thing is
Mm.
almost non-existent in Thailand.
Yeah.
The reason it does is because of the fact you could go so far as to say it's because the Watts have not been doing their job because most of those people would go live in the Watt. Let us say the
Hmm.
old lady is 56 and because of a bus accident or something that she's alone and all of her family is dead. What's she going to do with her life? The answer is she's going to go live in the Watt and she'll be happy there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And because of that, there are so few retirement places, but there are some. But I'd say there's probably less than 1,000 people in Thailand in retirement places. And I know
Right.
retirement places in the United States, one retirement place with 1,000 people.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the problem with these retirement communities is it's almost like a warehousing. It almost is a hospital setting.
Yeah. It's just
Okay, so
That's
I
very
know
much.
because I've been in, that was my family's business.
Oh, I see.
Long-term care facilities. And so it's interesting about the medication because the medications are not always, they're never forced,
Mm-hmm.
but it has to do with what does the word force mean? You cannot force a
Right.
patient, yeah, you cannot force a patient to take the medicine if they're absolutely adamant about not taking it. But there's a whole lot of tricks you can use to get them to take their
Yeah,
medicine.
you can convince them. And what's the definition of convincing? And where do we draw the line,
Yeah, what
right?
is the word convince? And how many fingers do I have to have on your throat to convince you?
Right. Yeah.
And so that it's very much a hospital setting when
Mm-hmm.
people don't need to be in the hospital. They don't need to be in these retirement communities.
Yeah.
One of them that I know of that I had an aunt that we tried to talk her out of it, but she paid the money anyway. And the place that she lived was more like a hotel.
Oh.
It really
That,
was. I mean, it had a great big lobby and a great big hotel. I mean, it really was spiff until you got to the individual rooms, and the rooms themselves looked like hospital rooms.
oh.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's not. Yeah, I think there is again a decision to be made about how much we want to protect and bubble wrap people just because they're old, and how much do we want to let them live their life in an adventurous, responsible, and autonomous way.
Hmm.
That is again very a complicated discussion, I think, because it's going to be very unique. But when you
It's
construct
only
the
complicated though because it's outsiders trying to figure out what to do with these old people rather than having the old people wise enough to figure out what to do for themselves.
yeah,
Well,
that's
there are blue zones here in the world, right, where disproportionate amount of people live over 100 years uh, within the community, and their way of living includes them not retiring but being basically a helpful part of a community. So they're taking care of
I
kids or
would agree with that. Then, in fact, the thought that I have had is let's combine retirement communities with daycare
yeah,
yeah.
that's perfect.
so that the old people have a chance to being around young people, little kids, and playing with them, and the
Mhm.
little kids get, let us say, a wide variety of people to deal with. That
Right.
this has been known in psychology for a long, long time, in the sense that if you have one child, a child that has a large family, that he's got aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas and all kinds of people, let us say somewhere between 10 and 20 people. And let's take that and then put an opposite example of that is that same child or another child in daycare where there are 20 children and one daycare keeper, or maybe two.
Mhm.
Okay, which means in that case of daycare, the children, 3-year-olds, are teaching 3-year-olds,
Right.
as opposed to wise old adults that don't have so much investment in that
Right.
child.
Yeah.
And so having the combination of daycare and old folks' homes is marvelous. I mean, I have seen that when the kids come to sing to the old folks on Christmas or whatever, we don't have to talk the people into it. That's one place where the old folks really, when there's kids around, they want to come see the kids.
Aw. Yeah.
And
And the
yet we
kids get,
separate them. We intentionally separate them when, in fact, the children and the adults both would be much better off if we could mix those two.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah, but in the age of COVID, is that at all possible?
well, COVID just puts everything on hold, doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the
everything
big
is
thing.
on hold. But the human race has made it through
Mm-hmm.
other epidemics. At
Mm-hmm.
least three black plagues, bubonic
Mm-hmm.
plagues. We know of them in ancient history. We know them in
Mm-hmm.
the Middle
Yeah.
Ages. We've seen them in 1904 and 5, huge outbreaks of the flu. We had the Spanish flu epidemic in 1918.
Mm-hmm.
We had the polio in the 1950s and rubella and all of that kind of stuff. And to look
Mm-hmm.
at the fact that, never mind that there are people who are resistant to the vaccines, by and large, most people in the UK, in India, many people in the United States, the population of Thailand, and I would say many other places, are very grateful for the fact that this vaccine is going to save millions and millions of people that could have died the way that they did with the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That in fact they say that in Europe the bubonic plague wiped out 2/3 of the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're not going to have that. We can get over this COVID. There will be
Mm-hmm.
those who are resistant to it, but to be honest with you, the people who have that kind of mentality, humanity could do without them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of
Humanity has
true.
taken care of itself. Another way of
Yeah.
looking at it is, and I like this, this is kind of humorous, that planet Earth has become infested with ants called humans,
Yeah.
huge ant hive, and that the planet Earth has decided to do something for her own benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And what could have done better than that? Because I mean, the skies have been filled with the smoke of airplanes. The city smog is there because of the cars. That there is global warming and heating because of all of this, plus all of this anger and frustration and hatred that we have in the world. And here Mother Earth comes by with an idea. I've got an idea here. I've got a virus. Let's spread this virus around and we can solve many of the world's problems. For instance, we got the airplanes out of the sky,
Yeah.
given the chance for the sky to clean up. And not only that, but it did a really heavy duty job on the oil industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
And
here
that's
the global warming people have wanted to do something about the oil industry and the clean skies, and Mother Nature did it for them. The
and that's
world is
no
much
different
better
than
off in general because of COVID. I look at it that way. You can see the positive. There's some positive benefits to COVID. Because there's positive benefits, we can put up with the small numbers of negative benefits. I mean, one of them is that I had to send a document to the United States, and it took 4 weeks to get there. Priority mail.
Yeah.
wow. Yeah.
Why?
Everything
Because
delayed.
there's so few flights leaving
Mm-hmm.
Thailand that
Mm-hmm.
go that eventually can connect to get mail to the United States. 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That means that very few planes are in the sky. I imagine the dolphins out in the middle of the Pacific are wondering where all the airplanes went. Because there used to be one every moment, and now I don't see any.
What you said is very interesting because it's not different to survival of the fittest, right? So it's like all of these crises that human population had experienced. If we take a look at it from an evolutionary perspective, people who coped healthily with that situation kind of made it, right? And
Hmm.
same with this virus. So people who are, making the obvious choice, not making the obvious choice, like sanitizing hands and just not taking vaccines and all of that, we can think of that as getting rid of people who are not maybe fit for survival.
You said it in a much more elegant way than I, almost making it
It's
acceptable. I'm just saying, hey, let all those fools just croak themselves to death. It's not my problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. Where's your compassion?
Well, that's my compassion, but my compassion is for Mother Earth.
Right.
Oh, well, that's right. That's
Or
another.
we can say our compassion is in pointing out that they are doing something obviously ineffective.
They're
Mhm.
harming themselves.
Yeah.
That okay? Now this is something that is kind of hard for us to realize because normally when we see someone harming themselves, we feel bad,
Mhm.
and so we want them to go and stop harming themselves so that we can feel good.
Yeah.
If we're to the position that we can let them harm themselves and I can still feel good while they're harming themselves, then that means that now I'm absolved of the responsibility of fixing them when they
Yeah.
think that they're not broken. Because they're quite comfortable and happy out there harming themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of conversation are you going to have with someone who refuses to get a vaccine?
Mind you.
And most of the time, what happens is when those conversations happen, both sides wind up miserable and hating
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knowing that, why bother? Let's get our vaccines. Let's take care of ourselves. Let's wear the mask. Let's do what's needed because that's what wisdom presents us. And when we do everything that we need to do wisely, then we can feel safe and secure and comfortable, knowing that
Mhm.
we've done what needed to be done. To
Yeah.
where those other people who are refusing to take the virus, deep down inside, there's those questions. They
Yeah.
feel insecure. In fact, it's because they feel insecure that they won't take the vaccine. And so
Mhm.
they're left with no options other than feeling insecure, unsafe, and uptight.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
That's their only choice. They don't recognize that they have another choice, and that is they can refuse the vaccine. I can't think of why they would, but you can refuse the vaccine and still feel good. But most of them don't. Almost nobody does. When they're refusing
Yeah.
the vaccine, it's because they're afraid of it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that
And
gives rise to justification, rationalization, and all of those nasty defense mechanisms.
mhm, where wisdom would say, hey, it would be better. I mean, just the statistics, and we know the statistics are that more than 200 million people have had these vaccines and nobody's croaked.
Mhm.
And yet, look at the number of people who are dying. It's still at 1,500 people a day are dying in the United States, all of them because of
Wow.
lack of coronavirus vaccine.
Mhm.
Now, at least the United States has some fairly good statistics simply because there's so many different places. I've heard that, for instance, the Florida government is trying to fix the figures, but the
Oh.
hospitals don't agree. The hospital figures don't agree with the government's figures.
Well, Florida has always been very special.
Well, Florida has always been in the South,
Yeah.
and that
Let's put it that.
explains a lot. It's
Yeah.
almost like since the 1860s, there's a certain section of the United States that prides itself on being stupid, foolish, ignorant, and full of hate.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We're gonna be canceled for speaking about Florida on YouTube.
I don't think there's any danger. I don't think that Florida has any police on YouTube.
No.
Thank God.
But
Yeah.
like I said, that the only thing that we can hold against Florida, it's not really Florida, it's the fact that that's just the situation they're in. They're in the South. There is a history of things happening there, and that over time things will change. But one of the things that we'll have to have that's changing, in fact, the only thing that really can change is people's attitude.
Yeah.
That's what needs to change.
And
Is the
because you said there has been a history, so it can be really hard for them to change that, which means it's going to take more time, more repetitions. So I guess the rest of the world just have to be patient and help them instead of being
happily patient, because
yeah
we can't fix them. We only
yeah
have a choice of being impatient and unhappy with
yeah
Florida, when in fact Florida is going to do Florida's thing.
exactly. And it's not just Florida. I guess it's like applies for every
That's just
other
an
thing as
icon. The
well.
word Florida, by the way, is just an icon here.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. That's so true.
Definitely. Well,
Anyway,
Yeah.
this has been a really wonderful conversation. We come up at about 2 hours now, and I really appreciate this. We've done a really nice job. The whole idea, starting with the idea of being in the airport
yeah.
and dealing with it. Now we're calling that airport Florida.
Oh, we can have
But
this.
it's nothing but the environment, and we can't really control the environment we're in other than getting out of it. That's one thing, is we can take a hike, we can move around in that environment.
Yeah.
But the important point is that we can handle any environment with the right attitude.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The attitude that we have is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we can change that. You have choice. But we have to exercise that choice every time that we get into that airport, or every time we think about Florida. We have to say, wait a minute, let's do this with wisdom. Let's not do this with bad feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. True.
So whenever you're thinking about money, by the way, money is just another icon. It's the same thing. I mean, we can use the word Florida instead of money. We can use the word airport rather than money. And it's always the same thing. It's our attitude about what it is that we're thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
So you can think about money the way you want to. I want to look at it as a great big pile to play with. Whoopee! You see them doing that in movies sometimes. What are you doing with all this money? Well, let's play with it. That's what we do with it.
That's only movies. I doubt in real life anybody feels comfortable with playing with money in case they lose some.
Right. Well, that's
Yeah.
because they think money is important.
Yeah.
You can't play with it. That's too important.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the little story about the little girl who really loves Barbie dolls, but the family's been buying her the cheap knockoffs that cost about $1. And one of the aunts decided that she's going to get her a real Barbie doll with all the accoutrements, and spend $60 on this Barbie doll, gives it to the kid, and the first thing the kid does is undress the Barbie doll and throws the clothes away, pulls the leg off of it, and the aunt's saying, "What are you doing?" And the kid says, "I'm playing with the kid. Thank you for your Barbie doll." Because the kid doesn't see the difference between the knockoff $1 Barbie doll and the $60. That's the adult who is putting it is important. This doll is important because it costs $60, and it's $60 is important money.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
we
so she
often
winds up feeling bad, where the kid's having a ball with that doll.
yeah. We often don't finish the sentence, right? Money is important for me or for you. It's not important in general, but it's
Not in
only for
general.
me or you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Democrats are always willing to spend somebody else's money. It's only the Republicans who keep saying, "You can't do that. That's mine."
Yep.
So that's how we work with money, is stop seeing it as mine, stop seeing it as I need it, and start seeing it as a toy to play with.
Mhm. Yeah, I understand. I'll have to probably revisit and
Well,
practice a little bit
remember,
more
that's right. Revisit,
of it.
remember,
Yeah.
re-practice, think it over,
Yeah.
recognize that, hey, this is a toy to play with.
Yeah. But you're doing great.
Yeah, you are doing. I mean, I am so pleased
Well,
with you,
thank
Anna.
you.
You have come so far. You're doing great.
Oh
As
my
Well,
God, that's
nice
good.
have you been smiling throughout this conversation today? And what does that tell you?
That's right. I haven't seen you burst out in tears, oh poor me, not one time in this talk.
Yeah, exactly. That's quite a change.
Talking about money.
Yeah.
And Debbie,
Yeah.
you've been marvelous as usual. Also, I really like that we have these conversations because I know that the little things that I'm giving you as tidbits, you can put that into your
Oh,
practice.
yeah.
I mean, the
Yeah,
kind of practice that
absolutely.
you're dealing with other people. I can see that you're going to be a marvelous first quality psychologist.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job,
Okay,
Debbie.
now I'm gonna have to decide whether I'm gonna have performance anxiety or not.
Well, that's up to you. You can have
Yeah,
your performance anxiety right here, right now, and get it over with.
amazing, guys. This is so enriching for me as well. It's always lovely to talk to Dhammarato, but Anna, you have been brilliant as well. So thank you.
Oh, well, yeah, no problem.
Excellent.
I
All
can
right,
bring.
guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. This
Yeah,
Thank
has
you.
been a
thank you.
great talk.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye bye.